No intention of fighting with Europe. I've said this 100 times already. But if Europe suddenly wants to fight us and starts, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. If Europe suddenly wants to start a war with us and does so, it's very likely that a situation will arise very quickly where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
Do you think the talks have brought us closer to peace or further away?
Not further, that's for sure. But there's still a lot of work to be done, both in Washington and in Moscow. That's about it. And contacts between Moscow and Washington will continue. We discussed the essence of what was there in those American documents. We could agree with certain things, and the President, Vladimir Putin, confirmed this to his interlocutors. We criticized some things, and the President did not hide our critical, even negative attitude to a number of proposals.
Putin, now he is thinking how to find new reasons not to finish this war.
Trump and his administration's never-ending effort to broker a Russia-Ukraine peace deal continues. The recent major development the world witnessed was Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, meeting Russian President Putin in Moscow on December 2nd. The entire world was watching the meeting closely, but not to my surprise, Witkoff and Kushner returned empty-handed as Putin remains determined to get what he wants. Russia is not compromising on any of its demands. A marathon 5-hour negotiation session on Ukraine, held between Russian leaders and U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, produced no tangible results. It's no surprise, as even U.S. President Trump couldn't influence his friend Putin during the Alaska summit in August 2025, and had to cancel the Budapest summit because Russia remained rigid on its hardline demands regarding Ukrainian territories. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov held a press briefing after the 5-hour meeting with Witkoff and Kushner, revealing what transpired during the talks. Speaking to the press, he downplayed the chances of moving closer to a Ukraine peace deal, noting that Putin was transparent and critical of conditions unfavorable to Russia. While Russia agreed on certain points, Ushakov emphasized that there's still a lot of work to be done, both in Washington and in Moscow.
The conversation between Putin and Witkoff and Kushner was very useful, constructive, and very meaningful. It lasted not for 5 minutes, but for 5 hours. Naturally, we discussed with US colleagues the content of those drafts of Ukraine peace plans, those documents which the Americans submitted to Moscow some time ago. We went through these documents. We did not discuss any specific formulas, any specific American proposals. We discussed the essence of what was there in those American documents. We could agree with certain things, and the President, Vladimir Putin, confirmed this to his interlocutors. We criticized some things, and the President did not hide our critical, even negative attitude to a number of proposals. Of course, the conversation, started with Trump's representatives conveying the greetings and best wishes from their president to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. On his part, our president asked the US colleagues to convey his friendly greetings to Donald Trump. Naturally, he, Putin, not only conveyed friendly greetings, but also requested to convey a whole range of important political signals, which Trump's interlocutors noted. and naturally will report about them in Washington, D.C., we agreed with our US colleagues that we would not disclose the substance of the negotiations that took place. This is quite logical, as the negotiations were absolutely confidential and closed to the public. As I know, after the talks, our US colleagues went to the US Embassy where they will report to Washington. Then they will go to Washington and report in person to President Trump on what they discussed with President Putin in the Kremlin.
Do you think the talks have brought us closer to peace or further away?
Not further, not further, that's for sure. But there's still a lot of work to be done, both in Washington and in Moscow. That's about it. And contacts between Moscow and Washington will continue.
Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner's Moscow visit came with full VIP treatment, an escorted motorcade, fine dining at a Michelin-star restaurant, and a leisurely tour of Red Square. Critics argued the trip appeared more like tourism than a serious diplomatic effort. The envoys didn't start talks at the Kremlin until more than 6 hours after landing, only to discover that Russia had no interest in their new peace proposal. While the envoys dined, Putin accused Ukraine's European partners of stalling peace talks with demands that Russia considers unacceptable. December 2nd night's diplomacy drew downbeat reviews after combative remarks from Putin as Witkoff and Kushner arrived at the Kremlin. He accused European powers of blocking peace in Ukraine, saying European demands were not acceptable to Russia. Europe is preventing the US administration from achieving peace in Ukraine, Putin declared, adding, Russia does not intend to fight Europe, but if Europe starts, we are ready right now. He did not specify which demands he opposed, but concluded they are on the side of war.
The Europeans are not staying silent. They're upset that they've supposedly been excluded from the negotiations. But I want to point out that no one excluded them. They excluded themselves. For a while, we had close contact with them, and then suddenly they abruptly cut off contact with Russia. That was their initiative. Why did they do that? Because they adopted the idea of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia, and apparently are still living under these illusions. Messages, but upon carefully observing that particular situation, they don't like the result today either. They started actively interfering with the current United States administration and President Donald Trump in achieving a lasting peace through extensive negotiations. They themselves adamantly refused any peace negotiations and deliberately obstructed President Trump's significant efforts. A party that has no control whatsoever over Russian objectives. That's the third point. They have no peace agenda. They are on the side of war. And even when they supposedly try to introduce some changes to Trump's proposal, we can see this clearly. All these changes are aimed at only one thing: at blocking the entire peace process altogether, to put forward demands that are absolutely unacceptable for Russia. They understand this. And in doing so, to later blame Russia for the collapse of this peace process. So was it suggested that your foreign colleagues, and even therefore if they want to return, to really come back to reality based on the situation that is unfolding on the ground, as they say in such cases, then by all means we allow for that possibility. We have no intention of fighting with Europe. I've said this 100 times already. But if Europe suddenly wants to fight us and starts, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. The only question is, over what? If Europe suddenly starts a war with us, I think it will be over very quickly. This isn't Ukraine. In Ukraine, we are acting in a very surgical, extremely careful, and highly precise manner. Just so we are absolutely clear about this, right? This is not a war in the direct modern sense of the word. If Europe suddenly wants to start a war with us and does so, it's very likely that a situation will arise very quickly where there will be no one left for us to negotiate with.
Following the unproductive meeting between Putin and US envoys Witkoff and Kushner, President Zelenskyy emphasized that there will be no simple solutions to ending this war. In a long post on X, he stressed the importance of fairness, transparency, and Ukraine's involvement in decisions about its future, including territories, frozen assets, and security guarantees. Targeting Putin, the Ukrainian president said, "We understand who we are dealing with. He is now thinking how to find new reasons not to finish this war," he further added.
Really, between us, it's very difficult to comment the words of leader of Russia, because he really doesn't want to finish this war, because he didn't get all the goals, what he wanted at the very beginning of this aggression. He wanted to destroy us totally, our freedom, our people. But he really been very surprised. Everybody understands who knows him and who doesn't. And that he didn't get any real goal, what he wanted. Putin, I mean, now he's thinking how to find new reasons not to finish this war. And we count on pressure from the United States and the people of the world. I think so. They are a very strong country. And they said that we have to work on this plan, and they will pressure on both sides. Of course, we wanted them to be more on our side, but okay, mediator. So, and they began to pressure both sides, and we supported the ideas. It's a little bit optimism was in my words because of some speed of negotiations, and from American side, their interest in it. It showed that America is not withdrawing now from any kind of diplomatic way of dialogue, and it's good. And it's meant that they gave us a signal. So it's about negotiations. If you're ready, we will work. They've got these signals from us, but this is where we are. I mean, for me, it's nothing new. The words of Putin, not new, but we have to hope. We not just hope, we hope and work, hardly work each day. And we hope, of course, because we want peace. That's why it's optimism. I think this is realism. We need to bring peace closer.
Multiple U.S. media outlets had suggested that Zelenskyy might meet with Witkoff and Kushner in Europe following the Kremlin talks. However, reports indicate that Witkoff left Moscow on the night of December 2nd, after Kremlin officials confirmed that the meeting produced no progress toward ending the war in Ukraine. They are expected to report to Trump on the meeting and its outcomes.